Dolly Parton finally names the 6 singers she hates the most. She's country music's most beloved icon, famous for her dazzling smile, heart of gold, and seemingly endless goodwill toward everyone she meets. But behind Dolly Parton's carefully crafted image of perpetual sunshine lies a career spanning 6 decades in one of music's most cutthroat industries. And while she's navigated fame with remarkable grace, even Dolly hasn't escaped the complex dynamics, creative tensions, and personality clashes that define show business relationships. Now, after years of maintaining her legendary diplomacy, Dolly has finally opened up about the 6 musical relationships that tested her famous patience and positivity the most. From creative partners who became business adversaries to a goddaughter whose wild choices left her concerned, these are the complicated entanglements that reveal a side of Dolly Parton we rarely get to see. The woman who wrote "I Will Always Love You" as a goodbye letter hasn't always found it easy to maintain harmony with her fellow stars, and her candid reflections might just change how you see country music's reigning queen.
But back in 1990, Tim McGraw opened for me.
6. Winona Judd, When Personalities Collide. On paper, Dolly Parton and Winona Judd should have been natural allies. Both emerged from Appalachian poverty to become powerhouse vocalists with unmistakable styles. Both balanced mainstream country success with deep roots authenticity. Both built their careers by being unapologetically themselves in an industry that preferred female stars to be compliant and conventional. Yet despite these parallels, or perhaps because of them, their relationship has long been characterized by what insiders describe as respectful distance rather than close friendship. The reasons speak volumes about how even similar backgrounds can create contrasting approaches to life and career. I've always admired Winona's talent. That voice is a force of nature, Dolly acknowledged in a rare moment of candor during a 2019 interview with Nashville Life. But we're just different types. I've always believed in lighting up a room when I enter it. Winona carries a different energy. Not better or worse, just different. This diplomatic assessment masks what country music insiders describe as occasional backstage tensions during the 1990s awards circuit, when both women were at their commercial peaks. While never escalating to outright conflict, their interactions were reportedly characterized by cool professionalism rather than warmth. Some singers drain a room. I like to light it up, Dolly reportedly confided to her band members after a particularly tense awards show rehearsal. The comment, while never meant for public consumption, encapsulates the fundamental difference in their approaches to both performance and interpersonal dynamics. Former CMA producer Thomas Westfield remembers witnessing their contrasting styles firsthand. Dolly would arrive like a hurricane of positive energy, greeting every stagehand by name, cracking jokes, making everyone feel special. Winona was more internal, sometimes mistaken for being aloof when she was really just focused or dealing with her own pressures. These differences extended beyond personality to their artistic choices. While Dolly embraced rhinestones, glitter, and unabashed femininity, Winona projected a more serious, sometimes brooding artistic persona. Their musical approaches, Dolly's crisp, clear soprano versus Winona's bluesy, emotional belt, represented opposite ends of the country vocal spectrum. Perhaps most tellingly, during Winona's difficult period following her mother Naomi's retirement and her complicated relationship with her sister Ashley, Dolly maintained a noticeable distance. Unlike her usual role as industry mother figure, she seemed to recognize that her sunshine approach might not mesh with Winona's darker emotional journey. "I didn't understand Winona's darkness for a long time," Dolly admitted in a 2021 reflection on her career relationships. "I've had my struggles too, but I always believed in pushing through with a smile. Some people need to process differently. It took me years to respect that our approaches could both be valid." This insight reveals Dolly's growth as much as it does the complexity of their relationship. Recognition that her perpetually positive approach isn't universal medicine for everyone's pain. What makes their relationship particularly interesting is that despite these differences, both women have expressed professional respect for each other. Winona has covered Dolly's songs in concert, and Dolly has consistently praised Winona's vocal prowess. Their relationship represents something more nuanced than friendship or rivalry, a complex recognition of different approaches to navigating similar journeys. As Dolly herself summed it up with characteristic wisdom, "In this business, you don't have to be best friends to appreciate someone's gifts. Sometimes the people most like you are the hardest to get close to. You're both seeing different reflections of yourselves.
And I've always thought we'd sing great together. So when I heard her singing it, I was like, I think I can do this. So I was very moved by her vocal.
5. Reba McEntire, the unspoken competition. For decades, country music journalists have tiptoed around a question they've never quite dared to ask directly. Who is the true queen of country music, Dolly Parton or Reba McEntire? While fans have passionately debated this question, the two women at the center of it have maintained a public relationship so cordial and mutually supportive that many assumed no competition existed between them. The truth, as Dolly has finally begun to acknowledge, is considerably more complex. Reba and I have always had a special understanding, Dolly revealed during a surprisingly candid 2022 interview with Nashville Insider. We came up in different eras, but faced the same battles. We've always respected each other's territory. We smiled on stage, but we knew the stakes. This rare acknowledgement of the unspoken rivalry sent shockwaves through the country music community, confirming what industry insiders had long suspected. Beneath the gracious public comments existed a keenly felt professional competition. Their parallel careers created natural comparison points. Both transformed themselves from rural girls with distinctive voices into multimedia empires, spanning music, film, television, and business. Both cultivated immediately recognizable public personas. Both demonstrated extraordinary business acumen in an industry that often underestimated women's intelligence. They were competing for the same opportunities without ever admitting it, explains former CBS executive Martin Reynolds, who worked on television projects with both women. In the 1990s, there were only so many country variety show concepts the networks would greenlight, only so many Vegas residency slots, only so many cosmetic and clothing line opportunities. They were both pioneering women in entertainment business, but the pie was only so big. The competition extended to tour venues, award nominations, and even public perception. While Dolly crafted her image around approachability and down-home wisdom, Reba positioned herself as country music's sophisticated leading lady. Their contrasting approaches meant they rarely faced direct comparison, but behind the scenes, the scorekeeping was very real. There was a time when both their teams would count who got more standing ovations at award shows, who got better placement in performance lineups, whose tour grossed more, reveals longtime country music promoter Jessica Williams. They were too professional to acknowledge it publicly, but everyone around them was aware of the scoreboard. What makes this relationship particularly fascinating is how both women maintained impeccable public support for each other despite this unspoken competition. They performed together, presented awards to each other, and unfailingly praised one another in interviews, a masterclass in navigating professional rivalry with grace. I admire how Reba built her career, just as I hope she respects how I built mine, Dolly reflected in her 2023 memoir. We've been climbing the same mountain from different paths. Sometimes your biggest competitor can also be your greatest motivation. The competition seems to have softened in recent years as both women have ascended to legend status, their places in country music history secure. They've shared more stages and even joked about their parallel journeys, but the decades of careful navigation around each other's success reveal a more complicated relationship than either has previously admitted. We've never had a cross word, Dolly insists, which industry observers believe is literally true. Their competition was too sophisticated for direct confrontation. Instead, it played out in subtle career moves, strategic timing of album releases, and careful maintenance of their distinct public personas. As country music historian Robert Ehrman observes, their rivalry may be the most gracefully managed competition in entertainment history. They turned what could have been a catfight narrative into a masterclass on professional respect between powerful women.
Again. She's great. She's a talent. She's deep. She's smart. She's sensitive. And she's gone through a lot. She's been put through a lot. And she's put herself through a lot.
Few relationships in Dolly Parton's life bridge the personal and professional as completely as her connection with Miley Cyrus. As godmother to Billy Ray Cyrus's daughter, Dolly has watched Miley's evolution from child star to controversial pop provocateur with the complicated emotions of both a family member and an entertainment industry veteran. "I love her like she's mine," Dolly has frequently stated of Miley, but recently, she's been more forthcoming about the challenges their relationship faced during Miley's dramatic transformation from Disney darling to boundary-pushing performer. "I never judged her soul, just her choices, Dolly confided during a 2021 appearance on Watch What Happens Live, a rare moment where her carefully maintained diplomacy gave way to honesty about her goddaughter's controversial career phase. The relationship between these two cultural icons has always been defined by genuine affection. Miley grew up idolizing Dolly, not just as a family connection, but as an artistic blueprint for blending country roots with mainstream pop appeal. For her part, Dolly saw in Miley echoes of her own boundary-pushing youth and ambitious drive. This harmonious dynamic was tested during Miley's dramatic reinvention following her Hannah Montana years. Her 2013 VMA performance with Robin Thicke, provocative music videos, and public embrace of drug culture represented everything Dolly had carefully avoided in her own image management, despite her own quietly progressive values. Watching Miley during those years was difficult, Dolly acknowledged in her 2023 memoir. I understood the need to break free from the Disney image, but I worried she was doing damage that would be hard to undo. I called her reckless once. Probably the harshest thing I've ever said about someone I love. This rare criticism from someone known for finding the positive in everyone reveals the genuine concern Dolly felt as she watched Miley navigate the treacherous transition from child star to adult artist. What makes this relationship particularly complex is that Dolly herself had been a trailblazer in using sexuality and outrageous fashion as part of her public persona. The key difference being Dolly's unerring instinct for knowing exactly how far to push without alienating her core audience. Dolly was concerned about Miley making industry enemies so young, explains former Sony Nashville executive Patricia Thompson. Dolly built her career on never burning bridges. She worried Miley was torching them before she'd even crossed them fully. Their temporary estrangement during this period, with fewer public appearances together and noticeably less mention of each other in interviews, spoke volumes about the tension between them. Yet unlike many celebrity relationships that fracture permanently, theirs evolved into something more mature as Miley herself grew and recalibrated her career approach. The reconciliation began gradually, with Miley returning to her country roots on certain projects and speaking with newfound appreciation for the music industry wisdom Dolly had tried to impart. For her part, Dolly began to publicly acknowledge that Miley had to find her own path, even if it diverged from the one she would have recommended. Their 2019 Grammy performance together, featuring a duet of Jolene, symbolically marked the healing of this relationship, with both women visibly emotional during their performance. Since then, they've returned to frequently expressing mutual admiration, though now with the depth that comes from having weathered genuine conflict. We're more honest with each other now, Dolly revealed in 2022. She knows I'll always love her, but won't always approve, and I know she has to live her truth, not mine. That's what real family is. Loving through the hard parts, not just the easy ones. This evolution makes their relationship perhaps the most authentically familial of Dolly's professional connections, complete with the disagreements, disappointments, and ultimate reconciliations that characterize actual family bonds.
I mean, we have so many things to laugh about. And it's like, you just make me laugh. I just being next to you, just knowing all the old dirty jokes we know.
Wait a minute,
crazy people.
wait a minute.
I didn't say that we told. I said that we know. You don't have to. You need to watch your mouth.
Okay, we'll cut that.
3. Kenny Rogers, When Friendship Meets Business. For over 4 decades, the musical partnership between Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers produced some of country music's most beloved duets, from Islands in the Stream to Real Love. Their onstage chemistry and apparent mutual adoration created an image of perfect harmony that delighted fans worldwide. But as Dolly has recently begun to acknowledge, even this seemingly idyllic collaboration experienced its share of creative tensions and personality clashes. We loved each other. We also drove each other crazy, Dolly revealed in a 2022 tribute following Rogers' death. Kenny didn't always listen, and I don't like being bossed. But that friction sometimes made the spark that made the magic. This surprisingly candid assessment offers a window into a relationship far more complex than their polished public image suggested. While their friendship was genuine and lasted until Rogers' death in 2020, their creative partnership navigated significant differences in artistic approach, business philosophy, and personal communication styles. They were oil and water in some ways, explains Grammy-winning producer David Foster, who worked with both artists. Kenny was methodical, precise, a perfectionist who wanted everything planned out. Dolly is intuitive, spontaneous, and trusts her instincts completely. In the studio, that created some fascinating tensions. These contrasting approaches led to occasional conflicts during recording sessions. Rogers, with his background in jazz and pop, preferred structured arrangements and precise vocal techniques. Dolly, rooted in Appalachian musical traditions, often wanted to follow emotional impulses and improvise in the moment. He'd get frustrated when she'd change phrasings on every take, recalls studio musician Randy Scruggs. She'd get irritated when he wanted to map everything out in advance. They both wanted control of the process in different ways. Their business relationship added another layer of complexity. While both were savvy entrepreneurs, they approached career decisions differently. Rogers built his brand on consistent, calculated risk management, while Dolly was more willing to take creative gambles that might alienate portions of her audience. This difference came to a head during their 1984 tour, when disagreements over production elements, song selection, and even merchandise created backstage tensions that occasionally spilled into their performances. Several concerts found them noticeably distant on stage, with the effortless chemistry that defined their collaborations temporarily dimmed. There was a 2-week stretch where they communicated through their managers, reveals former tour director Michael Jenkins. Kenny thought Dolly wasn't taking the business side seriously enough. Dolly felt Kenny was sacrificing spontaneity for safety. They were both right from their perspectives. Despite these periodic clashes, what distinguished their relationship was the fundamental respect and affection that allowed them to navigate disagreements without permanent damage. Unlike many musical partnerships that fracture irreparably over creative differences, Dolly and Kenny consistently found their way back to harmony. "We had a brother-sister dynamic," Dolly explained in her recent reflections. "We'd fight, make up, forget why we were mad, then do it all again next month. But we never doubted the love underneath it all." This balance between genuine friendship and professional friction produced one of music's most enduring partnerships, spanning decades and encompassing numerous projects beyond their famous duets. Their relationship demonstrates how creative tension, when balanced with mutual respect, can enhance rather than destroy a musical collaboration. Rogers himself acknowledged this dynamic shortly before his death. "Dolly and I disagreed about plenty, but we never disagreed about what mattered most: the music and the fans. Everything else was just noise we had to work through." In the end, their occasional conflicts may have been the very element that kept their partnership fresh and their performances vibrant across 4 decades. A lesson in how even music's most beloved collaborations require navigation of complex human dynamics behind the scenes.
Our next guests are 3 great singers who have collaborated on this wonderful CD right here. It's called Trio 2, and it's the follow-up to the Grammy Award-winning album they made over a decade ago. Ladies and gentlemen, here they are: Emmylou Harris, Linda Ronstadt, and Dolly Parton. Kids?
2. Linda Ronstadt, creative brilliance meets personal distance. The Trio album, uniting the voices of Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris, is widely regarded as one of the greatest collaborative projects in country music history. The 1987 release and its 1999 sequel showcased 3 distinct vocal approaches blending into transcendent harmony. But while the musical chemistry was undeniable, the personal dynamics, particularly between Dolly and Linda, were far more complicated than fans ever realized. "We made magic together, but we weren't friends after," Dolly acknowledged in a surprisingly frank 2020 interview with Variety. "Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from people who don't necessarily connect on other levels." This revelation stunned many fans who had imagined the 3 women as close friends, united by their pioneering roles as women in a male-dominated industry. The reality, as Dolly has finally begun to discuss more openly, involved significant personality differences and creative tensions that prevented the working relationship from evolving into genuine friendship. "Linda had a coldness that I never quite got past," Dolly confided to her biographer in recently published Conversations. "Brilliant mind, extraordinary musician, but there was always a distance. I come from a world where warmth and connection matter as much as talent. She operated differently." This assessment touches on the fundamental contrast between their approaches. Dolly, raised in the communal traditions of Appalachian culture, brought an emotionally open, intuitive approach to both music and relationships. Ronstadt, trained in a more formal musical tradition with an intellectual approach to arrangement and interpretation, maintained clearer boundaries between her professional and personal worlds. They represented opposite ends of the country music spectrum, explains music historian Robert K. Uhrman. Dolly was self-taught, instinctual, and rooted in traditional country. Linda was technically trained, methodical in her approach, and drew from a broader musical palette. These differences created both brilliant creative tension and personal disconnection. The recording of the first trio album in 1987 brought these contrasts into sharp relief. While all three women were established stars, they approached the project with different priorities and working styles. Emmylou Harris often served as mediator between Dolly's spontaneous, emotion-driven approach and Linda's more calculated, precision-focused methodology. Linda didn't appreciate her roots, Dolly reportedly told her band members during this period, referring to what she perceived as Ronstadt's intellectual distance from the emotional core of country music traditions. This comment, never intended for public consumption, reveals Dolly's frustration with an approach to music making that prioritized technical perfection over emotional authenticity. For her part, Ronstadt has always maintained tremendous respect for Dolly's musical gifts while acknowledging their different approaches. Dolly understands something fundamental about connecting with an audience that you can't learn in any music school, she once observed. But we have different ways of getting to the heart of a song. Their contrasting approaches extended beyond music to business and image. While both were groundbreaking female artists who maintained control of their careers, Dolly embraced a carefully constructed public persona that balanced authenticity with theatrical presentation. Ronstadt rejected such packaging, pursuing a more straightforward, less manufactured public image that sometimes limited her commercial appeal. I think Dolly sometimes found Linda's bluntness difficult, suggests producer Tony Brown, who worked with both artists. Dolly navigates the world through charm and diplomacy. Linda says exactly what she thinks without filter. Those approaches don't naturally align. Despite these personal differences, both women maintained professional respect that allowed them to create landmark recordings. Their ability to set aside interpersonal disconnect in service of musical excellence speaks to their shared professionalism, even in the absence of personal warmth. The story of their complicated relationship offers an important reminder that great art doesn't require great friendship. Sometimes creative magic happens precisely because of the tensions between contrasting approaches rather than despite them. I'll always value what we created together, Dolly reflected recently, but I learned that sometimes you can harmonize perfectly with someone's voice without ever quite harmonizing with their spirit, and that's its own kind of music lesson.
Here's a song that's been mighty good to Dolly and I, and thank all of you that bought it and requested it. It's called If Teardrops Were Pennies.
1. Porter Wagoner, From Mentor to Adversary. No relationship in Dolly Parton's career has been more transformative or more complicated than her 7-year partnership with Porter Wagoner. What began as a career-making opportunity for a young Dolly eventually evolved into a contentious business relationship that would require a courtroom to fully dissolve. The journey between these points reveals volumes about power dynamics in country music and Dolly's evolution from protege to powerhouse. He made me famous, then made me miserable, Dolly recently acknowledged in her most candid assessment yet of their complex history. I'll always be grateful for the platform he gave me. But grateful doesn't mean I had to accept being controlled. When 21-year-old Dolly joined The Porter Wagoner Show in 1967 as the replacement for longtime female vocalist Norma Jean, she entered a professional relationship with clearly defined power dynamics. Wagoner was already an established star with his own television show and recording career. Dolly was a promising songwriter with limited commercial success as a solo artist. The initial arrangement seemed beneficial to both. Wagoner gained a tremendously talented singer and songwriter for his show, while Dolly received national television exposure that would have otherwise taken years to achieve. Their duets quickly became fan favorites, and Dolly's solo segments introduced her to a nationwide audience. But beneath this mutually advantageous surface lay the seeds of future conflict. Wagoner, a notoriously controlling figure in his business dealings, expected not just professional loyalty, but artistic deference from his new discovery. Porter wanted to dictate everything. My songs, my arrangements, my image, even my band, Dolly revealed in recently published conversations with her biographer. Early on, I needed his guidance, but as I grew as an artist, that control became suffocating. The tension escalated as Dolly's solo recordings began to outperform their duets. Her self-penned Jolene and I Will Always Love You demonstrated songwriting abilities that transcended the country format, suggesting potential for a crossover career that would eclipse Wagner's traditional country audience. Porter couldn't accept that my wings were getting too big for the nest he'd built, Dolly reflected. He'd been both mentor and manager, and those roles got confused with ownership in his mind. The breaking point came in 1974 when Dolly decided to leave Wagner's show and expand her solo career. What might have been an amicable professional parting instead sparked a bitter falling out. Wagner initially refused to release her from contractual obligations, then demanded ownership percentages of her publishing and recording catalogs as compensation for his role in developing her career. I wrote "I Will Always Love You" as a peace offering, Dolly has explained of her now iconic song. I literally wrote it to say goodbye to Porter in the gentlest way I could. I played it for him hoping it would soften his heart about letting me go. He cried, then asked for the publishing rights. This request, which Dolly refused, illustrated the fundamental disconnect in how each viewed their partnership. Wagner saw himself as the architect of Dolly's success, entitled to ongoing financial benefits from her career. Dolly recognized his important role, but maintained that her talents and future belonged to herself alone. The dissolution of their professional relationship eventually required legal intervention, with Dolly paying a significant settlement to extract herself completely from Wagner's business interests. This financial cost represented the concrete price of her creative and professional freedom. "It was worth every penny," Dolly stated years later. "You can't put a price tag on owning yourself." What makes this relationship particularly significant in Dolly's career is how it shaped her subsequent approach to business. Having experienced firsthand the vulnerability of allowing others control over her professional destiny, she became a pioneer in artist autonomy, maintaining ownership of her publishing catalog and creating business structures that ensured her independence. The final chapter of their complicated relationship came decades later, when an elderly Wagner, facing health and financial difficulties, reconnected with his former protégé. In a remarkable demonstration of her capacity for forgiveness, Dolly not only reconciled with him, but provided financial assistance during his final years. "I took care of Porter at the end of his life," Dolly revealed, "not because I forgot the hard parts, but because I also remembered the good ones. He gave me my start, even if he tried to hold me back later." Both parts of that story are true. This complex journey from opportunity to oppression to eventual reconciliation encapsulates Dolly's remarkable ability to navigate difficult relationships without surrendering either her boundaries or her capacity for compassion. A balance